Bonjour French 101 students, or should I be saying Salut French 101 students? And the reason I say that is because we are going to be moving from formal greetings, formal conversations, to less formal conversations. As you can see at the top of our slide here, it says Les salutations familières. So this is basically familiar greetings, informal greetings. So we're greeting classmates, friends, family members, or children. Adults to children would use these less formal ways of greeting. So you noticed that I started off this video presentation with the greeting Salut. So this is going to be an informal way of saying hello and even in some cases goodbye. Sometimes people will use Salut also to end a conversation. The first thing I'm going to point out about Salut, as we look at it here at the beginning of the first conversation, is some pronunciation tips. As you can already determine, French pronunciation definitely has some major differences from English pronunciation, so we need to learn about some of those differences. And if you understand those differences and how to form those different sounds, they'll become more familiar to you and they'll become easier over time, and also easier to understand when you hear people saying these words and using these sounds. Okay, so with the word salut, you have two vowel sounds there. The first one being a, kind of like father in English. That's pretty easy. The second vowel sound you see there is U. What do you notice that seems a little bit different about that sound compared to English? Okay, in English, we have two U sounds, like a short U like a, or a long U like oo. Okay, so oo sounds quite a bit different than U. And basically, one of the biggest differences is that my lips are really tightly rounded for the French U sound, and the sound is a little more forward in the mouth. A great way to make this sound is to take a familiar sound that we know from English, like E, as in the word eat. Take that sound, E, and then pull your lips together and form the tightest circle that you can while you're saying the E sound. So it would be like this. E. So you're kind of taking that E sound and just making it as tight as you possibly can, and that gives you a French U sound. Salut, salut. Notice the T at the end of this word is silent. So that's another aspect of French pronunciation we're going to notice a lot. Many words have silent consonant sounds at the end. Not always, but many, many times that is the case. Okay, so salut Pierre. Juliette is starting off this conversation. She's saying hello to Pierre, and then she says, ça va. Okay, ça va simply means how are you? How is it going? It's an informal way of asking that. Remember in the second video presentation you learned the expression comment allez-vous? That is the formal way of asking how somebody is. And now we're learning the informal way, and that is ça va. And notice that in the first part of this expression, ça, there's a little tiny tail on the bottom of that C. That is called a cédille. It's C-E-D-I-L-L-E. And that basically means that that letter should be pronounced like a S, almost like an S sound. So little by little, we'll learn the different features of pronunciation. So let's go ahead and have you pronounce or practice saying the first line of this conversation. I will say it, and then I'll give you a moment to say it. Salut Pierre, ça va? Okay, let's move on to the next part of that conversation. Then Pierre answers and he says, Salut Juliette. Okay, another couple of things to notice here is that the J at the beginning of the name Juliette, it doesn't sound like the J we would use in English. In English, we would say Juliet, right? It's a more forceful kind of a sound that sort of pops out of your mouth. Juliette. In French, it's a different kind of sound. It's just like the sound that comes in the middle of the word pleasure or garage, if you pronounce it that way. So it's not Juliet, but Juliette. And it's a sound you kind of hold out a little bit longer. So, salut Juliette, ça va? Okay, let's go ahead and have you say that part of the conversation. All right, and then she continues on by saying, et toi, comment ça va? So now she's putting it back to Pierre, or actually this is Pierre speaking, right? And he says, et toi, okay, and you, comment ça va? Okay, so this is almost the same. So comment means how. Notice that the T is silent at the end. Comment ça va? How are you? Okay, so comment means how, ça va basically means how are you also. So it's another way of saying it. Okay, so let's have you say that part of the conversation. Et toi, comment ça va? All right, and then the final line of that conversation. So we finish it up by saying pas mal. Okay, pas means not, mal means bad. Put it together and you get not bad, okay? An informal way of saying how you are. Notice that the S is silent, and another good thing to point out that helps you have more authentic pronunciation is that this P sound at the beginning, and it's kind of the same with the T at the beginning of toi. In English, we kind of pop these sounds out. We say t, t, like test or take. The P at the beginning of a word, it's similar, like, let's see, press or push. Those sounds kind of pop out of the mouth. In French, they're a little softer, a little more subdued. So instead of saying toi, it should be toi. Or instead of saying pas, it's pas, a little softer. So, pas mal. Okay, now it's your turn to say it. Pas mal. All right, great. Let's take a look at the next conversation. So notice that the speakers in this conversation, they don't know each other. They're probably both students. They're meeting for the first time. So they use the greeting bonjour. Remember you learned that in the second video when you learned about formal conversations. So maybe once they get to know each other a little bit better, they'll say salut. But for now, it's bonjour. Remember that the O-N sounds like a vowel sound coming through your nose. Bon, almost like you have a cold. Bonjour. And that J is just like Juliette. Bonjour, je m'appelle Pauline. Je m'appelle means my name is, or literally I am called. So, je m'appelle Pauline. Okay. And remember what I mentioned before with pas mal. The P at the beginning of Pauline is a little bit softer. So in English, we would say Pauline. In French, it's Pauline. So, bonjour, je m'appelle Pauline. Now it's your turn. Okay, and the next part of that first part of the conversation, et toi, so and you, tu t'appelles comment? So notice now in this conversation we're using informal pronouns. In the second video you learned about vous. Vous is one way of saying you, and it's a formal way of saying you. If you talk to somebody who's maybe in a higher position than you or someone who's older than you, you would use vous. When I was in France years ago, I lived with a host family. They were an older couple in their 70s, and even though I got to know them pretty well over the couple of months that I stayed with them and learned French, I used vous with them the entire time because they were older than me and I needed to show respect to them. But the two people in this conversation, they're on the same level. They're probably both students, so it's fine for them to use tu or toi. So they say, et toi, tu t'appelles comment? What is your name? Okay, so now it's your turn to try this one. Et toi, tu t'appelles comment? Okay, and so the guy answers back and he says, moi. he's saying me. Je m'appelle. Okay, my name is, or I am called, Lucas. So, two things that you learned about before with pronunciation. The French U is in this name. Lu, not Lou, but Lucas, Lucas. The S is silent. Okay, so let's try to say this one. Moi, je m'appelle Lucas. Okay, and then he says where he is from. Je suis, I am. Je, just like Juliette, is the same kind of J sound. Je suis de Lyon. Lyon is one of the major cities in France, the second or third largest city. And he says, et toi, tu es d'où? And you, tu es d'où is where are you from? Oh, now it's your turn to say it. Et toi, tu es d'où? Okay, and finally they finish the conversation by saying, moi, je suis d'ici. So me, I am from here. Ici means here in French. Okay, let's give you a chance to say that too. All right, and let's take a look at a few other expressions that we can look at here, and these are ways to say goodbye. So one way that you could say goodbye informally is à plus. In this case, the S is pronounced at the end of this word. Sometimes S is pronounced, sometimes it's not. And you'll get used to that more and more as we go along. À plus, salut. Notice the U is pronounced the same way in both words. Okay, so those are basically informal ways to say goodbye. There are some other ways that you can say goodbye, informal or informal conversations. One is au revoir, and that literally means until the next time we see each other. So, voir means to see. RE, we use this as a prefix all the time in English, to redo something, for example. So it means again. So in this case, it would mean until we see each other again. Often when people are speaking quickly, au revoir becomes au revoir. So the RE kind of gets dropped in quick conversation. À demain, okay, so see you tomorrow. You might notice that I sign off some of my emails to you this way, or I might say à bientôt, which means see you soon. À plus tard, okay, see you later, or à plus. And then finally, salut. Okay, so I hope this gives you a good sense of the difference between formal conversations and informal conversations, and that you're getting a little bit more familiar with French pronunciation here through the video interactions and also in your Mind Tap activities. Any questions that you have as you go through the videos, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'll be glad to help. À bientôt, à demain, au revoir, salut!